So for today, I want to talk about something I haven't really touched on before. And while it has a lot to do with women, it's both for men and for women. It's essential for both of them to hear this message and to understand, because it affects both of them. And what inspired this was actually Mr. Fred. When on our last workshop he said, Dahryn, when she was first with Gurji, she used to do only two things, laugh or cry, which is true. But I'd like to say, even now, I still laugh and cry a lot. But what happened is, I think a lot of people who haven't gone through that deep love, they not to say they haven't experienced love, but when it's that intense, all you can really do is laugh or cry. Or pass out. I think we undervalue tears. I think we're so used to associating tears with weakness. Especially men. I think that there is this overall societal, worldly view that when someone cries, it's weakness. It's not a strength. It's not something of great value. And I don't mean crying for trivial things. But that's our only association with tears. That's what our main association has been. Mostly. When you've reached that point, tears are the greatest gift. They're not even tears anymore. They come from a place of great power and strength. What that person has had to do to deserve to be able to cry like that. It's beyond your comprehension. It's beyond the mind's understanding. But we'll use our reference point. right? We'll go subconsciously to the filing cabinet in our brain and our mind and pull up all our experiences, all of our associations, what the world accepts and engenders as how things should be perceived, not as things are. So we have certain reactions when someone starts to cry. We either back away or we feel uncomfortable. Or we can perceive it as weakness. I've had many people who have come up to me and said, "I love what you teach. But it's not quite my path. You know, I need someone who can really drill in the message." And you know, you're all about the love and like peace and joy and happiness. Which, in my opinion, is something that you really need to drill into you to really get it. But it's just what that person needs. You know, if they're not ready for that yet, then that's fine. Enlightenment is not having a calm mind. It's not just that. It's not just happiness. It's not just being peaceful and experiencing joy on a day-to-day basis, though that is a part of it. Though again, our association with joy and happiness and peace and calmness is very, very limited. Again, I wouldn't tell you anything unless I knew it for sure. Unless I've gone through the experience. Unless I know. Enlightenment can't be comprehended or understood or explained because it's limitless awareness. It's beyond the mind. Illusion, perception, is not seeing things clearly. The perception that we operate with on a day-to-day basis is an aggregate of many, many different factors based upon many circumstances, our relationships, based upon our past experiences, based upon the society or part of the world that we live in, based upon the family we were born and raised into, what we're taught in schools, what we bring in, the empowerments or the lessons that we've learned from previous lifetimes. But we've come to think that this is all that we are. When honestly, a majority of it didn't even come from ourselves. It's not authentic to us, to who we truly are, to how we feel. I mean, really feel. But one special topic that I'd like to address is women's enlightenment. Now, the reason I want to address women's enlightenment is because I'm sure we're all aware, and if we're not aware, this will be very surprising to you. But women have gone through a lot of oppression and subjugation throughout history, in many different societies. Patriarchy has been the ruling hand. And out of necessity, women have been very dependent upon men just to survive, just for their basic survival in this world. So what's happened as a result is you hear all over the place, and we'll get a lot of questions about women's enlightenment specifically, and why aren't a lot of women enlightened? Or why don't you hear about them? But you've also heard messages from Guruji that women are more receptive to this energy than men. So if that's the case, if women are more receptive to this light, to this divinity, then why don't we see a lot more women who are enlightened? It's possible. There are enlightened women in the world. I mean, enlightenment itself is very rare, so it's not easy to find in general. But when you do find it, it exists in both men and women. It's not to say one is better than the other, one is more powerful than the other. So why? Women, in case you can't tell, are very sensitive. And I don't just mean sensitivity as in being offended. That is not what sensitivity means. They have a more developed sensitivity to divine light, to God, to love. I mean, it's in women's nature to love. It's in men's nature as well, but it's more pronounced in women. Especially when you see a mother and their child. I mean, that's the closest form of unconditional love that you can find, is a woman and her child. Because of this sensitivity, because of this, they're actually quite powerful. Their nature is power. Which sounds strange because everywhere in the world, you'll see men in power. Or women will always be surrounded by this complex notion that they are the weaker sex, that they're not as strong. That they can't do as much as men can do, or that, they can't be the breadwinner, they can't earn enough money, they can't do what they need to do to survive. That they need a man. And this has been something, this isn't new, obviously. This has been around for a very, very, very long time. Because there was a point in time, not so much now, at least in the Western world, but there was a point in time in which it was necessary that a woman be married to a man or be under the protection or control of the men in the family. Because women had no say. They needed a man for survival. Because men had all the positions and power. They had the money, right? They controlled society. So it's been this conditioned response in women from both parts, not just from the men and not just on the women's side. Both have been feeding to this notion that women are inferior or less powerful, or they can't do as much, right? That they're too emotional. But power is one of the greatest aspects in a woman. Maybe not power that we've understood power to be, but real power, spiritual power, enlightenment. And the reason for that, funnily enough, is because of their oppression. The reason why they've developed this, you can call it the second attention, you can call it the sensitivity, their psychic abilities. Is that they've had to develop that because they've had no support. They've had no support from the outside world, right? They've had to find their own strength to get back in the game, to take control, or at least attempt to. And through this power, through this sensitivity, they've actually been able to figure out, right? Again, this is not something that is understood by the mind, because this is something that's beyond the initial thought perception of the mind, right? This is sensitivity we're talking about. So they found a way to be able to put out sexuality, desirability, so that they can attract a man. And they're so good at it because most people agree, especially men, that the men are the more sexual people, that the men desire more sex than women. Right? That's something that's perpetuated. That's a common conditioned accepted belief. That women don't want a lot of sex, but men want a lot of sex. And that's largely in part is because women, through their sensitivity, through the second attention, have been able to persuade men of that. Because they've gained this ability to put out sexuality, to put out desirability. And if the ego is too strong in somebody, they'll feed off of it. They'll believe it. They'll be like, no, this is my own sexuality. This is why I desire this from her. It's not her power over me. It's my control, my power over her. I want sex from her, when really it's often the other way around. But women are so good at it. But they might not necessarily know that that's what they're doing either. Because again, this is centuries old. This is something that has been conditioned so much into them that it's almost like it's part of their DNA to do that. It's just an instinct now. It's not a conscious decision to do this. It's just something that they've learned how to do, and it works for them. That's what's happened to a lot of people in society, is they've learned these ways of, you can call it manipulation, to get what they need for survival, or to get, the things that they want. And because so many people use it, it's just something that we've learned to accept as normal behavior. That we learn that this is an acceptable thing to do. This is what I need to do to get by. That's definitely happened in regard of women. But that's also the problem. Is because women have been so dependent upon using their power, using this attention, by using whatever strength they have in their spirit to be able to attract the right man, or to gain some semblance of control in the relationship. It also sort of forces them to become more involved in the aspects of duality. Right? That they're using this power and ultimately losing it because they're literally giving it away. Because when you use energy for that purpose, you're giving it away. When they can really use this great power within them for their own enlightenment. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that women have completely dominated men and men are the ones that are suffering the most. I can assure you that whatever has happened on this planet throughout many centuries and lifetimes, that Men have abused their control over women, and women have suffered far more. In that regard. But one of the things that pains me the most is when I often see women coming to me because they want to find a spiritual man in their life. That's not to say you can't have a spiritual, beautiful relationship with someone. That's not what I'm saying at all, because it's very much possible. There are sensitive men, there are beautiful, very evolved men on this planet as well. But women, since it's still almost a part of their conditioning in their DNA, it's like from a very young age, their whole world starts revolving around looking for a man or a boyfriend or a partner. And they think that that will bring them happiness and love. While you can both use each other, while you can both be complementary and help uplift each other towards your own enlightenment. But what I see more often is women aren't necessarily looking for love in a man. They're in love with love. But because of society, because of our perception is built up of all these ideas, these excuses, it's how we place ourselves in the world. That's what our initial perception is. Right? Our ego is this sense that we need to belong here. And so we adopt all these different beliefs and ideas and conditioning, and we're under control by people because we've, in a way, allowed it to happen. Because we feel like this is how we fit in, this is how we belong into this world. That men can't be sensitive, or that sensitivity in a woman is weakness in a woman. That you shouldn't cry, that you shouldn't laugh. I've had people get offended by me laughing before. How miserable do you have to be to get upset by someone else laughing? So nobody's able to live as they are authentically. With all the good and the bad, just as they are. They care too much about what other people think. They don't want to hurt other people's feelings, which isn't a bad quality, that you don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but if it prevents you from being a happy person, why should your own happiness, or why should you prevent yourself from being happy just because it hurts somebody else's feelings? They're hurting their own feelings. Happiness doesn't hurt anybody. Happiness brings more happiness into the world. There are too many miserable people, which is why it's so easy for us to feel miserable and be miserable. It's the accepted understanding on this planet that life is miserable. The world has accepted it. that the nature of this world, of the life we live, of the relationships we have, is that happiness is very rare. And it is. But we've accepted it. We accepted unhappiness as something natural and normal, when it's the complete opposite. Again, the complete opposite. There are people who will turn women away from religious institutions or spiritual practices simply because they are a woman. They'll say, oh wow, you're very spiritual, so hopefully next lifetime you'll be born as a man and then you can become enlightened. It's like enlightenment isn't even in the realm of possibility or in the understood realm of possibility for a woman to achieve. And I can almost guarantee that most of you, when you do seek a spiritual or enlightened teacher, a lot of you are not expecting to encounter a woman. But they exist. And it can happen in the Western world too. It doesn't have to come from the Eastern world or from India or Tibet or... Oh, I'm with an Indian guru. I've learned this truth. I'm not a servant to anyone except God. If God wants to put you in the role of the Joker, you'll play the Joker. If God wants to put you in the role of the businessman, you'll be the businessman. The great revered teacher, you'll be the great revered teacher. It's not a matter necessarily of what role you play. But the role you play won't be dependent upon others or society. You'll take crap from no one, but you'll take crap from everyone if you have to. If that's what God wants you to do, you'll do it. There are even beings on this planet who, though they've reached enlightenment, though they don't need to come back, they'll come back again. And that doesn't mean you come back into this lifetime remembering everything. No, you forget everything and you have to learn it over again. I mean, you bring your enlightenment into this lifetime, so you have that empowerment. I mean, it's a part of who you are, but you still have to go through the steps again. Remember. And in many cases, having to keep on living is a lot more miserable than having to die for many cases. But it's not about that, because you're willing to do anything because you love so much. It's worth it. That love, that ecstasy, you know that truth, and you're willing to come back again and again as long as it takes, until every sentient being is free. Because you're a servant to God. It's not about being more special or rising up the ranks or becoming the guru's right hand. is just loving and enjoying life. And sometimes the pain of love is greater than the pain of life. But still, even then, it's worth it. You wouldn't give it up for anything. I'm here to show you that women have just as much of a right to become enlightened as men. Not only that, but they're more sensitive and more receptive to this energy, to this light, to this love. And I can tell you that as a man on this call, you are too. One is not more inferior or more superior than the other. That is not the message I'm trying to convey. What I am trying to convey is possibility. That the possibility of enlightenment is there for you, no matter who you are or what you are. Life will unfold exactly as it needs to. Strive for greatness. There's nothing greater than enlightenment, so strive for that. But also know that humility is required, because it's not about you wanting enlightenment for yourself. You put in the effort. You do the good deeds. You do what you need to do. Go out and achieve things in life. Be successful. It's empowering for your spirit when you do that. You gain power from it. Right? This whole planet is enlightenment, so it's not like one path is less spiritual than the other. It's all spiritual. That's all there is. And like I said, you put in 0.01% of the effort, and this energy, this grace of God, will do 99.99%. But when you're on that threshold, when you're at that door, you have to know that it's not what you want anymore. If enlightenment happens to you, it's simply because of grace. And it'll happen to everyone at the right time. You will always be given what you need when you need it. You know you're doing well on this path when you feel a synergy with life. When the flux and flow of the world oscillates with you, when you oscillate with that. Guruji's like, oscillate with me. I love that. I was like, okay. Laughing and crying again. Stop it. It's crazy. You have to be a little crazy to want this, I mean. You have to be madly in love. But don't get so caught up in the past that you lose touch with the beauty of the world. Everything around you is God. Everything you do, you're co-creating with the Creator. That is your essence. That's why when Guruji says he gives power to your spirit and you're able to see changes and transformation happen in your life, you get the things that you want. You'll have to be very careful because with this energy you will eventually get what you want, but it might not necessarily be really what you want. So be careful. But Guruji's empowering your soul, your spirit, so that you can achieve more, that you can do greater things that you could not do before. It just wasn't even in the realm of possibility, either because you didn't have enough personal power or willpower to do it and get it done, or it just didn't exist on your plane of awareness as something that could possibly even happen. Like Guruji, he's saying, the men will come to him and they'll say, these women, they've become so arrogant, or, my children have become so arrogant. Right? They're not under my control anymore. They don't do what I want, so it must be bad. Or they don't follow me or listen to me. They've gained the empowerment that, your higher self, your soul knows what you're here to do. It's not something you learn or you're taught in school or you read in a book. Your soul knows. When you give your spirit the reins, the control in your life, through this energy, when you're given that boost, that empowerment to go out and get it done, and you make the effort to go out and get it done, once you know that this is what I need to do, and you make that 0.01% effort because you take the step to do it, and then fulfillment happens. That feeling of fulfillment, that satisfaction, going through the struggles of life, the trials and tribulations, the sufferings, the pain, everything, and then finding the courage, that strength within you to pull yourself out of that and do something with your life. You find your strength in spirit. You find that strength, which was there to begin with, but you had no idea it was there. Because you had too much sludge, too much ice coating that divine presence within you. You didn't feel it, you didn't recognize it before. That is why even the trials and tribulations of life have their purpose. That doesn't mean you always have to go through it. Once is enough. Most people go through it many, many times, but once is enough. Once is enough to learn. But you use that to find your strength. To find your power. So when truth comes to you, you recognize it. That you find your worthiness, you find your deservingness. Through the pain and struggle of it all. until you've reached a point on the journey, on the path, in which that's not necessary anymore for you to find that strength. That you have enough strength, you have enough power, you have enough light and beauty within you. You've melted away enough, you've been sanded down, you've been washed away, that in everything and in all things you see God. You see life, because that's what God is. God is life. The very essence of creation. Being spiritual doesn't mean you remove yourself from the world. That just means in the world, you see that beauty and that light, that divine presence in everything and in all things, in every situation. That no matter who you interact with, who you talk to, who you associate with, you can recognize that presence within them. That you can see as much beauty in a blade of grass as the sunset. You see it. Love and life are together. They're inseparable. If you haven't loved, you haven't lived. I'm sure you've heard that, and it's true. I can tell you. Boy, can I tell you. You'll do anything when you're in that existence. When you are that, you'll do anything for love. Not because you don't have it, because you have so much of it, you'll just do anything. Have you ever had that experience with someone? You've just loved someone so much that they ask you to do something for them, you're willing to do anything? Even if it's not something that in any other circumstance you would enjoy doing, but for some reason, because it's for that person, it brings you joy to do it. That's what it's like on a smaller scale. Much, much smaller. When God wants you to do something, you'll put in 110% of your effort and you'll enjoy every second of it. Even if it's doing the taxes. Playing the fool. The comedian. Not for others. For God, not for a person, for enlightenment. Whatever it takes, you'll do it. And enjoy it. People are so stuck in doing good and doing the right thing and progressing, and they're putting in a lot of effort, and that's great. That doesn't mean don't put in any effort at all. But do it with a sense of humor, with joy. Life is too serious to be taken seriously all the time. I was talking to somebody who would always get really nervous being around Guruji. And all it is the ego. The ego knows it's about to be dissolved, right? That it's going to face a tough situation. And, life does whatever it can to survive. That's why people get so reactionary around Guruji, because the ego's trying to hold on. It senses its own dissolution, its own demise, so it'll do everything to try and gain back control over life, over the situation. Because like I said, when you let go of everything and you're floating around in empty space, it's more terrifying than anything. That's what the ego senses. The ego senses you're losing yourself. You're losing your reference point to reality, to the world that you live in. that everything you've been taught, all your tricks of manipulation or all your tricks of using other people or whatever you've needed to do to get by, your relationships with other people, everything is going to change. Like I said, when one aspect of you changes, whether it's being selfish, whether it's, there's some anger within you, there's jealousy, even if it's just that one piece of the puzzle that you're working on, right? You're working on your whole totality as a result, because everything has to be reordered and shifted around to fit back into some semblance of reality. Because you've taken out one piece and everything that's connected to that piece, which is everything. Everything in your life is connected to one another, right? It's like this intricate web. Every part of yourself is always connected to an experience, an emotion, a feeling, a person, a place. So if you remove one part, right, that whole web has to reorder itself. That's why you see different parts of you that you didn't see there before. It's not because they weren't there before, they were always there. But because things have been shifted around so much, you see a different picture. It's a different vantage point, a different view of who you are, of how you've been living your life, of things you've most likely been very numb to, that you didn't have awareness of. And all the power to come and do that comes from God. That's all the power is. There is no other power. So it's important when you see this happening, not to feel ashamed of it, not to feel guilt, unless you still need those very primitive feelings to take action and do better in your life. Which, no judgment here. If you need that, you need it and you use it. But if you can go beyond that and just see it for what it is, recognize it, accept it, say, yes, this is still something that's a part of me. But my spirit, my soul, I'm stronger than this. Right? That even this will dissolve too, by God's grace. It's the same thing when you have that deep desire and longing for God and enlightenment, when you're at that final step where all you do is want that. And that's also your deepest pain and frustration, is that for some reason you're just not there. You're just not close enough. You just haven't done enough, but you don't know what to do. What can I do? It's not you who does that. That's humility. It's not you at all. It's all God. Everything you've achieved in your life, all the money, all the success you have, all the status, fame, and wealth, all the relationships, all the love, all the peace, all the happiness, all the good memories. The very gift of life has been given to you from God. When you sleep at night, you're not telling yourself to breathe in and to breathe out and for your heart to beat. God's doing that for you. The very fact that you wake up the next morning is because of God. Not because you've decided, I'm not going to die tonight, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning. Power comes from God. And a lot of people who've gained power from previous lives or whatever means and methods, and they bring it into this life, they don't necessarily have to be on a spiritual path, not an identifiable one. Like I said, everything's spiritual, so you can't not be on a spiritual path. It's not even your choice as to whether you're on a spiritual path or not. It'll come to you. But people who are born into this world with that empowerment, right, to make changes, to, be successful, to have lots of money, lots of attention from the world, it's because they have power. They do have that power. But if you don't have the wisdom to go along with it, you can misuse that power. And it can get you more stuck in the world of duality than you were before. Power doesn't mean that you are more enlightened or less enlightened. Right? There are enlightened beings who don't have any power, and there are enlightened beings who have lots of power. And power is a gift. Well, they have power, but power to do things in the world and manifest and, make you smell good, whatever you want. Make you smell good. And there are certain people who are very evolved, very sensitive souls, who, even though they're not on a path per se, they might not be identified as spiritual, according to what this world considers spirituality. Right? They know that truth, right? They've done the work, they've evolved enough, the divine has transformed them enough to the point in which they just know intuitively, like, this is good, this is what I need to do, this is not the right thing to do. Like, they understand they're beams of light, they're vibrant, they're happy, they're joyful. They know to do enough for others, to give of themselves. And then you have people of power who don't have enough of that wisdom to go along with it, who abuse it, and as a result, it affects their consciousness detrimentally. But just because you don't have power, if you don't have a lot of money, you don't have that power brought forth into this life, initially anyway. I mean, you have power, truthfully. You're here, aren't you? Sometimes it's a better gift not to have that power. Because power amplifies all of your characteristics. It gives power to more of who you are. If you have lots of power, but you're still involved in being very selfish or arrogant or egotistical or jealous or angry, a lot of those lower states of mind, you're giving that more power. That's what you're doing. And you'll lose that power very quickly. So Guruji says a lot of people who have lots of power, why did they lose it so quickly? Always pair power with enlightenment, with wisdom, with truth and knowledge. If you don't have the power, revere the truth and the knowledge first. Power will come to you. It's not necessarily your decision. Neither are really your decision. Because trust me, with this energy, with this power that you're receiving here, You can get a lot of things that you want. You can accomplish and do a lot of things that you aren't necessarily even aware of right now. Our job here, we empower your spirit. What you do outside of these webcasts, outside on your own, in your own terms, with your own life and your own relationships, who you lose energy to, who you give your power to, who you associate with that drains you, and you feel it a few days afterwards, you just feel like, man, that person just made me exhausted, right? You know. And this energy empowers your spirit so you can start to recognize these situations, so that you can prevent yourself from losing this power, from losing this energy, so you can maintain it, maintain your spiritual growth, and progress even further. Use it. It's not selfish when you see someone and you know that that relationship is not good for you or for them. Whether you're the abuser or you're the one being abused, neither are good for you or for them. To allow someone to take advantage of you because you feel compassion for them or because you have sympathy or empathy for them, that is not right. That's bringing them down. That's getting that person more involved in the world of illusion and duality. That's separating that person even further from truth. It's not compassionate. It's foolish. It's trickery. You don't pamper those people. You don't flatter them. You don't make them feel good for no reason. Them feeling good is up to them. That doesn't mean you abuse someone. That because you don't want to flatter someone or pamper someone. I've seen people do this after hearing a discourse from Guruji, thinking that, okay, I shouldn't flatter or pamper people, but then they completely shut off from other people. Like if someone pays them a compliment, instead of just being like, yes, that's true, I did a good job, and I acknowledge that. They fear that accepting the compliment is them accepting pampering. Do you see how tricky the mind is? You know when you're doing a good job. You know when you've done something well. If you look good, you know you look good. If someone pays you a compliment, you're like, you have good taste. I accept your compliment because it's true. I do look good. Thank you. I know. It's when you see that someone looks like crap and you say you look good. That's pampering. That's flattering for no good reason. Because your soul, your spirit knows if it's truthful or not. Whoever you pamper or you flatter, that person's spirit is going to know that there's something artificial about you. Whether that person knows it consciously, something within them will know that's not sincere. If it's sincere, it's from a good place. They'll recognize it. Consciously or not, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. If someone does a good job, then they've done a good job. It's fine to say they've done a good job. That's why humility is seeing exactly who you are as you are, no strings attached, as perfect and imperfect as you are, and accepting it, surrendering to that higher power. That sensitivity, that gentleness, that love, that purity, that beauty. That's the same place where power comes from. Don't forget that. Don't undervalue the tears of the blissful. Watch it. Be absorbed in it. Take it into yourself. When you feel touched by someone like that, and they might not even necessarily show tears, because you have to have a lot of discipline on this path. So a lot of times, they're very disciplined and very strong. That even though they feel that intensity, that love, they want to just jump on everybody, but they restrain themselves because they know that that's not something that society looks as a normal or appropriate thing to do. Because you still have to live in the world. You don't jump on everybody you meet. So you can imagine the control and the discipline. Cherish every tear that you weep for God. I think you'll notice that when you cry tears of frustration, when somebody puts you down and you're crying, when you don't feel good enough, as opposed to when you cry for God. I mean, really weep. Those tears for God give you life and energy, but those tears for those small, trivial, painful things, they deplete you. They fatigue you, they make you tired, because you're losing energy. You're giving that more power. You're giving that power of tears. Boy, but when you cry for God, and you know when you're on that final step towards even more steps. You're like, how do I stop myself from wanting enlightenment? If I have to even stop wanting enlightenment for my own enlightenment, how do I stop that? This is what I've been saying. You don't. You don't stop that. You give everything you have to God. You revel in God. You rejoice in God. And eventually God will dissolve that for you. Just as God has dissolved everything else for you. Just as God has made you more pure. God does that. has made you innocent, has made you laugh and cry like a kid. When you are absorbed in that, even that will go away. And I'm telling you, it's not calmness and peace and happiness like you think it is. It's far beyond that. It's not limited by calmness and peace and joy. It's not even limited by love. Because even your love is an idea of what love is. It's bigger, it's grander, and it's unlimited. That's why enlightenment is limitless awareness, not perception. Perception is the mind reflecting back to you on the world. It's your own impressions. It's your own interpretations. This is beyond interpretation itself. There's a reason why enlightenment is called the clear light of reality. Because when you've completely absorbed into it, you don't even see that light. How do you see what you are? Especially when there's nothing to reflect upon. It is impossible to talk about. I have no words that are sufficient. And even language is bound by constraints because even language comes with its own perception. The English word for this is a different meaning and connotation than a Hindi word or a Spanish word or another language, another term for that. It comes with a different meaning. And it still shapes the framework of your reality. Words do no justice to enlightenment, to God, to truth, to love. The only way you can understand it and begin to feel it, because that's what that sensitivity is that I was talking about. It's not something you learn. It's not logical, nor is it practical. But you can use that empowerment for logical and practical means. But of its own nature, it's not logical or practical. So you need that sensitivity. It's a requirement. It is not weakness, it is strength when you have that sensitivity to feel the truth, to intuit what's the correct thing to do, what's the correct path, how to behave and how to respond in life to both good and adverse situations. Right? That sensitivity is essential. That sensitivity is like that sponge, wherever you put that, right? There's a reason why it's called your second attention, because it's a level of awareness that you apply somewhere. You can put that sponge, if you put it in a crappy situation, all you're going to absorb is crap. If you apply that sensitivity, that's why you don't focus on the lower states of mind, negative people. You don't surround yourself with that, because that sensitivity, that sensitive nature within you is going to just soak that up if you're not aware enough. if you're not paying attention. Be absorbed in God. Now, don't feel bad if you are sensitive and you can tell when something has affected you. Right? You're feeling out the world. You're feeling how different things and scenarios and people and situations impact you, impact your soul, impact your path. That is important. It is essential. That's how you grow. When you feel bad that something has affected you adversely, when you wallow in that self-pity or that self-doubt or that failure, right? It's that sponge, it's that sensitivity becoming even more involved in that. Soaking up even more from that. You don't need to wallow in it. Understand what you're feeling, recognize it, acknowledge it, don't ignore it or suppress it. Understand it. And use it. Use that new knowledge, that wisdom that you have, so that you can do better, that you can apply yourself better in the future, in the next moment. You're not born on this planet knowing everything, and it's not expected of you that you know everything, that you're completely perfect, that you have it all figured out. Even the enlightened don't have it all figured out. They just stop caring because it's not important to them anymore. Who could care when you have God and you have everything? It doesn't matter. Listen to it. Watch it. And be conservative. Don't just give your love and your power away to everybody. You need it for your own growth, for your own enlightenment. You can love God and everyone and in everything. That you can do, because then you're becoming more empowered by that love. Because all you are is absorbed in eternity. You're not absorbed in a person or their attention, their field of ignorance. You're not absorbed in that. You're absorbed in the essence, which is God. I've had people who are like, I'm with my family and I always feel so drained with them, but it's like my parents, they're old, it's not like they can learn and improve and do things to change their life. And they're not like, very abusive or anything, but I still feel drained when I'm with them. The best thing you can do in that situation is love the essence of what they are, which is God. You don't need to like them. You don't need to like everybody. You don't need to appreciate everybody. You don't need to like the same music everybody else likes. You don't need to like all the qualities or characteristics in a person. You don't need to be around them either. But when you acknowledge that presence within them, you're saturating your whole being with that essence of God, that beauty and that truth. So even in those situations, if you have enough awareness and enough strength to put yourself there, only then If you don't have that strength, if you don't have that awareness, or if you're surrounded by people that keep bringing you down, right? You notice that certain people will bring your awareness down. Your judgment will be more clouded when you're with them. And I don't mean judgment as in the reactionary, you're a good person, you're a bad person. I mean your discretion, your discernment, your ability to see clearly without reacting on an emotional level. You just know that this person is like this. If you can't maintain that when you're with certain people, then perhaps it's just best not to be around those people. Because more energy, more power, more of this light, more of enlightenment, it brings up your awareness. It makes you more sensitive. It should give you a clearer mind. Should. But depending on how you use that energy that you're given, this power that you're given, who you surround yourself with, how you interact with others, that's where a lot of people lose power. And most of the time it's with the people that are closest to you. But if you have so much ego that you're busy talking all the time and you don't give a chance to sit and listen to somebody else talk, you're not going to feel or know that. Because you need to be aware. You need to be present. And you need to be able to watch and observe and feel. If you're too busy projecting something onto somebody else, you won't know. You're not going to feel what the right thing to do is or who that person is. Because all you're doing is you're feeling yourself. Feeling yourself up. You don't need another person for that. You just stand in front of a mirror and talk to yourself. You'll probably get as much satisfaction from that. A major part of life is just watching and listening. Both to the outer world and your inner world. Because both are very loud. The importance of going into that stillness after the blessing. Right? You're given that heightened awareness from the blessing. And it's your special moment. It's your reverence for God. And if you're fortunate during that time, because of that grace, because of that divine, that light, it'll help to slow your thoughts down, to reduce the noise, the static, so you can feel more of what you are, of who you are. The blessing is in the silence. Now there's just silence. Hello? What I'm trying to say is this world is very, very tricky. It's filled with people who want to take your energy, or it's filled with people who have that victim mindset, who will continuously, unconsciously put themselves in a scenario day after day, relationship after relationship, circumstance after circumstance, so that they are the victim. They will keep attracting that abuser into their life. For God knows what reason. But with this empowerment, this blessing, you're free. You can feel yourself again. I mean, who you really are. It's that bird in a cage. And Guruji opens the door for you, and if you're not aware, if you're too lazy, if you're not willing to put in any effort, if you're willing just to be around Guruji just to get as much energy as you want and not do anything with it and just expect to have a free ride to enlightenment, you'll never see the door. It's right there and it's open. It's been opened for you. When you're with the teacher, it's not necessary that you gain a position of power with them and that you are by their right hand and that you're the one making the mission go forward and that you're getting all the glory. Being with the spiritual teacher and enlightened master isn't about that. That's business. You might be a good entrepreneur. Enlightenment, for the really evolved souls, you might not even need a very close relationship with that teacher. Just to love, to have that reverence, that respect, to give your all, to do what you know is right, as far as you know it's right, until more of you dissolves your whole self and you start to really feel what's right. It'll come. Don't worry about it. Don't get caught up in the worry. You can advance very far that way. Just as much. Or if you're brave, being in that aura, in that presence, can do wonders. Or it can make you crazy, depending on who you are, depending on what's there. But if you are evolved enough, if you have advanced enough as a soul, you don't necessarily need the proximity. You can gain just as much. Wherever you are. Just have that love, that reverence, that self-giving. Be absorbed in God, in that stillness and the silence. And do what you know is right. And you'll gain just as much wherever you are. Perhaps even more. I did see one question from someone about what the purpose of doubt was on the spiritual path, and how that helps to expand your consciousness. When I say doubt has a purpose, I mean to an extent. What doubt does is when you have a very, very restricted view on how life is to be lived, about people, about reality, about teachings from others, about your own beliefs, right? You understand you're working within a very specific and very limited framework about reality and truth. So the purpose of doubt is that it'll start knocking down some of that structure. You have doubt that life is really this way, or is life actually this way? When you doubt something that you were so sure about before, when you realize that maybe there's a different reality, that is when your awareness starts to expand. You start doubting, like, okay, I was always taught to fear God, for example, but I'm starting to doubt that belief. That's just an idea, right? That's how people have felt before. That's a certain institution that has taught the fear of God, maybe for the benefit or to benefit off other people, maybe to gain control, right? There are certain ways that doubts can come. And given the situation, given the circumstance, doubts can help you to become aware of other alternate realities that exist. So your old beliefs and ideas will start to fall away, and doubt helps to destroy them, to really obliterate them. So you start to think, well, if that's not true, also what else do I believe, or have I been living that may also not be true? You start searching. You start looking by other means and methods. You start trying out new things that you would have otherwise never tried before. Like a lot of people who have come to Guruji for healing because of a specific physical ailment, for example. They've come because at some level or another, they've found doubt in the current governing allopathic model of healthcare that suggests this is health, this is what we know about how the body works, this is the best there is. And while it's very good for you, right, it's very advanced, especially in terms of its surgical practices, it's beneficial. I don't say ignore the allopathic healthcare model, right? Use it. It can be beneficial for you, but they're also becoming more aware of its limitations and that maybe there's something more that needs to be addressed. Maybe even it's something more than just the body. Maybe not everything is so black and white. Right? So they've sought all these other different paths towards their own healing. And whatever led them to Guruji, like I said, it doesn't matter what reason you came to Guruji. Whether it's for healing, whether it's love of God, whether it's because you want to have success in your life, whether it's for your relationships, whether you're suffering and you just don't want to suffer or relieve it just a little bit, you want happiness in your life, whatever the reason is. You're here ultimately because of God. So doubt plays a role in the expansion of your awareness because it opens doors. Now, as you become more aware of possibility, or you become more of awareness itself, if there's anything that you should not have doubt in, it's in the natural unfoldment of life in the spiritual process. The natural process of enlightenment. It will happen at the right time. Life will give you the circumstances and situations you need for your growth. You just trust in the process of life. Whether you might not necessarily trust the teacher or understand, at least trust that divine has put you there for a purpose. Trust in life. And trust that God, divine, is life.